You clicked on a video, wondering what this was about. Perhaps fate? Perhaps something more? Perhaps it was the What is Tabletop podcast. Hello, my name is Frank. I have been GMing for 10 years, and with me is
Charles, and I've been playing these tabletop role-playing games for about a year, maybe a year and a half now.
And Charles is confused why I started the episode that way. But, you know, we got to be fun. We got to have these be a little different sometimes.
I thought you were going to go with like the whole Emperor Palpatine thing.
Good.
Do it.
Excellent. Yep, I'm going to, well...
That's more Mr. Burns, but that's
sure,
fine.
sure. But we will end this episode with me throwing Charles out of a window. I think that's a fair thing.
Hey, defenestration. It's a new word. Look it up.
It's not a new word. I feel like...
It's a new word for you, maybe.
Maybe.
It's my favorite
Anyway,
word,
speaking of new things, what are we talking about today, Charles?
Today, we are talking about story building.
Ooh. Why did you do this?
I don't know.
Because you're building the story with your fingers? Oh.
My magic. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, we're talking about story building. We're going to be specifically talking about how to make a plot for your campaigns, for your RPG campaigns. How can you make a story that is interesting and cool and awesome and also original?
Yep, those are some of the questions I'll be asking.
All of the questions. I've ruined the entire episode.
Well, you don't need me. See ya.
But while we're at it, make sure you like and subscribe, hit the notification bell, do all the things YouTube tells us to do. Literally, there's a representative from YouTube in the room with us. They have a gun at me. I'm not supposed to point them out, but I did anyway. They can't kill me on camera. That's what I think, right? Can I say that now? I think we can say that now. Why not? We're far enough into the video. You can't unalive me. That was actually a really funny episode of Ultimate Spider-Man. They had Will Friedle playing Deadpool, and he couldn't say kill.
Yeah.
We're going to K-word them.
K-words then, yes. I remember that.
It's like, wait, you mean kill? No, I can't say that word. It has a weird notification, not like a weird itch in my brain about it. It's pretty funny. Will Friedle did a good job then. Also plays RPGs. Relevant. Anyway, first question.
All right. Our first question is, what makes a good story in a tabletop role-playing game?
So the key word there is for a tabletop RPG, because most people are going to say, oh, a good story is a good story. And that is mostly true. It is important to understand that when you are writing a story, when you're coming up with a plot, understanding the medium that you are using is going to be very important. For example, the kind of story you're going to tell with a book is not the exact same story you can tell with a movie, with a TV show, with a podcast, so on and so forth. Every medium is going to have its own unique challenges and drawbacks. And so knowing what those challenges and drawbacks are is going to be super important. So the biggest thing about storytelling with RPGs is that it's collaborative, meaning, most importantly, you as the GM do not have the final say on anything. I mean, you do, but not really, right? If a story is going off of beaten path, you're going to have to follow that story and really hope you can figure it out. If the dice start going the direction you don't want them to go, you're going to have to pivot and figure that out. You're going to have to know how to improv. Some of you, that might be a great word, and some of you might be like, oh no, college all over again.
Absolutely, because I think even for players, it's a kind of a challenge to improv some things sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, sometimes you want to do something, and the dice go a different direction, and you're like, oh, well, I can't do that now, so now I've got to think of a different solution.
And so that is what we're going to be talking about is, yes, we're going to go over like story structure and stuff like that, but we're also going to talk about how we can modify those kinds of things for RPG settings and understanding that choices are going to inevitably be made.
What makes how do you make an original story? You know, or what makes a story original?
What makes a story original is the fact that no one has seen it before. Now, that doesn't mean that that story has never been told before. It just means no one has seen it before. Fun fact about your group of players, you should hopefully know their tastes. And so, like, if you're playing a Star Wars RPG, hypothetically, and a bunch of them have seen Star Wars, don't just rip off Return of the Jedi. Like it's not gonna work out well. But if you rip off, let's say, Indiana Jones, because none of them have seen Indiana Jones for some reason, which makes no sense because you would think.
Lucas, but
yeah, I don't know. Let's say they haven't seen Temple of Doom, or they haven't seen Crystal Skull.
Okay,
sure, why not?
Yeah, why not?
And you can like maybe make it more interesting. I don't know, but you can take the plot of something that they haven't seen. Maybe it's a book they haven't read, right? And you can take that and steal it, and they're gonna be like, "That was so cool. How did you come up with that?" And you're gonna be like, "Yeah, I came up with that. I definitely didn't steal it." Yep. So recognizing originality is going to be hard, depending on the kind of person you are. you might have make an argument that there's only 7 types of stories, in which case you're not going to be able to be original because the story has already been told before. But being able to steal things from other things is great. Taking a story that maybe everyone already knows and changing it slightly, that's going to make it original. Knowing what your players like. Even like that's going to be a huge thing, right? If they like one thing, keep doing that and then just change it a little bit. And boom, you don't have to worry about originality anymore.
How much preparation should go into your story?
Both a lot and not at all. Right, we talked about improving. So naturally, you're going to have to be okay with things not going the route you think they're going to go. Not just because your players are going to do insane things that you never thought they were going to do, but also because the dice, if you allow them to determine how the story plays out, they will almost inevitably play out in a way you didn't think they would. And so being able to pivot from that is very important. So I would say the best thing to do is to have something laid out, right? And knowing maybe there's like a branch at the end. So let's say you're going to go fight a dragon, right? Why not? You're going to go fight a dragon. They've been stealing the dragon's gold. And then they get to the dragon fight, and the dragon seems to be very talkative. So now you have a choice. You either fight the dragon or you negotiate with the dragon, right? That's a simple plot. Here's your task. You're going to go do your task. Complication. We can talk to it. We can just fight it, right? And so from there, knowing, okay, if they negotiate with the dragon, he's willing to stop stealing the gold if you can find him a new source of gold. Or fight the dragon, you fight it, but it's going to be a little bit tough of a battle, right? Just having those two ideas plopped out is going to be a good way of getting some preparations. Now, let's say you have a group of party members who are like, so we could negotiate with the dragon. We could kill the dragon. What if, and hear me out, we seduce the dragon? Because everyone wants to do that for some reason.
I thought you were going a different route with this. I thought you were like, or we could try to steal, like be sneaky. And then you went
you could try. No, and that's the thing too, right? See, I didn't even think about that. You could try to steal the gold from the dragon, right? That's an option too. Which case, right? So knowing your two paths, right, and being able to modify it. So let's go let's try to seduce the dragon route. You modify the negotiation to where it's like, it's a little bit like, okay, we're seducing rather than negotiating, and if we're successful, it worked out. If we're not successful, crap. Or you could just have it be where like even bringing up that option initiates the fight. Conversely, same with stealing.
Yeah.
You could have it be where it's like, okay, I have the stats for the dragon, so I'm just gonna have them, work around that, and then the second they get caught, the dragon's not gonna negotiate. He's just gonna attack. Or conversely, maybe this is you decide to be like, this is a nice dragon who actually hasn't been stealing gold. He's been framed by the king. And so you're trying to steal the dragon's gold back, and he wakes up and he's like, why are you stealing my gold? I'm a dragon. I'm a nice dragon. I earned this gold working in the mines.
The mines.
And so now it's like, wait, you mean if we had just talked to the dragon, we would have found out that the king secretly just wants more money? What? See, and now you've changed it a little bit, right?
Yeah.
But like you have to improv or get creative with that. You have to be willing to understand that your players, I'm just going to focus on Charles as I say this, your players are going to do random things you can't anticipate.
Who, me?
Yes, 100%. Well, actually, you're not as bad as other players I've had, but there's some people. Oh my gosh, they're so bad.
And sometimes you get to a point too where you kind of know what your players are going to do. Like I look at Jeffrey lovingly.
Smash things.
Like, so you want to fight this thing, don't you? Yes, I do. You want to kill this thing, don't you? Yes, I do. It's like there's no negotiation. It's like, let me just
occasional
negotiation. If it benefits his character specifically, yes.
It is really funny when you can if you can anticipate character.
Yeah.
Things, right. So we were playing the Star Wars RPG. Jeffrey has force powers. Mm-hmm. We were walking by these things. He's like, am I near a ledge? No. Oh, I want to push a guy off a ledge.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I will set up a situation where that's the case. Oh, look, here's this cab you can steal near a ledge. Perfect. Is the guy near the ledge whose cab we're going to steal? Yeah. Okay, I'm going to steal that. I'm going to push him off. Okay. You successfully push yourselves off the ledge.
Yeah,
and now you were falling in a car. How are you going to do that? Right?
Oh, it was so good.
Oh, it was so fun. And then meanwhile, Charles's character is just in an elevator with another guy, and they're like, do, 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 do. Background, you can see them falling. Like, ah.
Yeah, it was great too because my character, this other character,
Hate each other.
well, I don't hate his character. His character hates my people. Like, I don't know the backstory yet, so
Yeah.
I'm learning that stuff. But I know he doesn't like me, so it's just funny. He and I are just going down this elevator, and then the other two of our players the player characters are, in a death fall.
I love the line from Heaven. It was like this is the worst. No one could be in a worse situation than I am right now.
And then we pan over to them falling. Yes.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah. So like being able to, you're gonna have to improv. Like naturally, you're gonna have to be able to think on your feet. That is the curse of this kind of thing. Yeah. I think the only way you can make sure that the story goes the way it is if you do a dungeon where it all loops back in on itself, right?
Yeah.
So like Telltale, famous critique of Telltale games, where you got to make choices, and as you made choices, it branched off, but then inevitably they always come back to the end, right? I think of The Walking Dead, where you have to choose to save one character or another. And you're like, crap, this is going to be such a big moment. All right, I choose to save this girl because statistically, everyone killed the guy, in that choice. And then 3 episodes later, she dies.
Oh.
Out of your control. Like, there's nothing you could have done. And it's like, oh, wow. So, like, that choice was meaningless, huh? And notice, right, in those moments, it feels like, oh, that choice meant nothing. Because, like, the character dies either way. And it's true. That character dies in that moment, regardless of which character you choose. And so it's like, why? Because they didn't want to get to the end where it's like you could have had either of these characters, and then now they have to write new dialogue depending on which character is there. Right? Like if you're doing a dungeon, if you're doing what we call like being on rails, where you're forcing your party to go down a specific plot, your party's not going to have a lot of fun, because part of the fun of Dungeons and Dragons is these weird choices that you can make, being able to do literally anything, including what the GM can't anticipate. And the fun thing about it is because the GM is there, they can make decisions immediately. It's not a video game where it's only whatever the programmers have put into it, right? And this is honestly what has ruined video games for me, is role-playing games, because like in a role-playing game, I can do something insane and the DM can be like, all right, I'm gonna match your insanity and this is what happens. But in a RPG, there has been multiple times where I'm like, in a video game, I want to do this. Well, I can't do that.
One day, maybe when AI gets there,
But even then, I don't know. It's still going to be limited. Like I don't.
Yeah,
that's
true.
It's still going to be limited because they're not going to be able to think as creatively. Like they're only going to be able to do
rehash.
Rehash old things. And so like that's going to be the sad part.
Yeah.
And so that's why like that is a skill you need to have, is improv. Now I will say, when it comes to preparation, and this is just because I'm weird, you can be the kind of person who can prepare long in advance without the worry that the players are going to do something insane. So, for example, I usually like to think of who is the big bad before a campaign starts, and how can I sprinkle that big bad, that plot thread throughout the campaign, without the players feeling like their choices don't matter. And we talked about this in our last episode of character creation. An easy way to do that is to have the big bad be tied to each character's personal backstories, because then it's a very, like, naturally they're going to have to interact with them. You can have a situation where no matter what the players are doing, in the background, the bad guy is doing something. So I had a campaign where they let this bad guy go, and he went free, and unfortunately, like this war was happening. And I was like, do you guys want to stop the war? They're like, no, the bad guy's in the background. We got to stop the bad guy. He's doing bad guy stuff. And I'm like, okay. And so like what was meant to be a distraction of the war, they were like, no, we're not falling for it. We're going to go do the bad guy. We're going to go fight the bad guy. And so then I had to come up with like other distractions, because I wanted the bad guy to get strong so he could become like a boss, like a boss fight at the end of the campaign.
Sure.
But if they keep stopping him, it doesn't become interesting. And so it made the characters' choices still matter. They chose, we're not going to participate in this war, we're going to go fight the bad guy. But then I adapted, because I knew what my endpoint was. It was, they're going to fight this guy. This is going to be the big bad of the entire campaign. So now I'm just changing the distraction tactics that I had in order to get there.
So I guess what brings us to our final question, and is, how do you get your players to buy into your story? Like, how do you get them to want to participate?
So, one, knowing what tropes they like, right? We talked about this, right? You can't predict your players, but you kind of can. You can
know them well enough. You can, yeah.
You can know. And usually when players make a backstory, they're kind of subtly telling you, this is what I want to do. they're saying like, this is what I enjoy. And so if, let's say Charles makes a character whose backstory is that he's a mercenary, that means he's going to want to go out and find like bounties and bring them in. Cool. All right. That's a trope that I can add in there. And so now anytime they get to a town, it's like, you want to check out the bounty board? Yeah, I do. Yeah, let me go to the bounty board. Right. And then you can have the plot be tied to one of the bounties. And now suddenly it's like, oh yeah, this politician is wanted, and he happens to hold the secret to your backstory. What? And so that becomes interesting right there. Obviously I just spoil what the second part is. Tie it to your character's backstories.
Absolutely. Tie it.
Like, so knowing your tropes,
connections.
Yeah, knowing the tropes, knowing what your players want to do, but also like tie it to your backstories, right? If we have a character, let's say his name's Jimothy, and he has a secret that he doesn't know about, literally having it where it be like, oh yes, you're Jimothy? I know your secret, but I won't tell you unless you do this quest for me.
Fine,
I will do it. I'm Jimothy.
I am Jimothy.
Right, and so you can just have it be, right? Like if you're like, I really want to do this really cool fight with an owl bear, or Quack Cthulhu, which is from a Critical Role campaign. It's
oh,
really
that
fun.
sounds so good. I need to watch that.
Yeah, it's really fun. You can have it tie into some sort of personal stakes where it's like, if you do this thing that you don't want to do, then you can find some cool, interesting backstory information. Conversely, you can also set it up like a sandbox where, let's say you have 3 ideas of stories, right? This is Jurassic Park, but the dinosaurs are zombies. This is
this is all starting to sound so familiar.
This is Space New Zealand, and this is some other third thing, right? You have these 3 ideas all like somewhat plotted out, not too deeply, but somewhat plotted out. Then you can be like, okay, I'm just gonna tell them like, hey, you can go to, hey, don't go there, that's where the zombie dinosaurs are, or hey, do go there, that's where Space New Zealand is, right? And then the players can be like, ooh, we have a choice. And in actuality, it's not necessarily a choice. It's more just like, okay, whichever one they go to, I will tie that into the story somehow. Maybe I'll leave a plot hook there, like when they go fight the dinosaur zombies. It turns out that they were actually created by this mad scientist. Boom. Now I have some sort of connection. Maybe that mad scientist works for the big bad, or is the big bad, however you want to do it. Maybe they go to Space New Zealand and find out that there is just a bunch of kiwis, like literal bird kiwis. And it's like, why are these bird kiwis here? Oh, it's this weird scientist that's connected to the big bad. So
The Planet of Dr. Moreau.
yeah, sure. Why not? I don't care. I know that reference.
Yeah. Do you know the reference?
I do.
Okay.
I haven't seen it, but I know it.
Interesting. It's yeah.
Yeah, it's an old one.
Hey, so why don't we go ahead and workshop a an example of just a small like storyline we can do.
Sure. So okay, I'm gonna help Charles figure something out. So let's think of, okay, so what are we playing? Is this a fantasy, sci-fi? Is this Fallout? What are we thinking?
Why don't we do something different? Because we do fantasy a lot, and we've been talking a little bit about sci-fi. I'd be fine with sci-fi, or we can go the route of like maybe supernatural.
Sure, let's do like a supernatural, not necessarily horror.
Maybe like a thriller type.
Something horror
mystery maybe.
Sure, horror mystery kind of a idea. Sure.
Okay, let's do that.
So we're gonna go with that. So naturally, first thing we want to do is figure out what are the tropes that we're going into, right? So if we're thinking supernatural, so that means we're gonna have some sort of like weird creature that's secretly behind this entire thing, right? Maybe it's a spirit that like keeps possessing people. Maybe it's some sort of creature that's taking the human form, right? You can have whatever it is. You want to figure out what the trope is. I think when it comes to investigative stuff, always starting with the answer and then working your way back is going to be easier. So what's something you're thinking of? What do you like?
I like the idea of having a supernatural creature, being like behind everything. So I also love the idea of shapeshifters because that gives us a lot of a leeway into our story too.
Yeah, so we'll do a kind of like a doppelganger.
Yeah,
right? Like
for sure.
Some creature that can literally shapeshift. Let's give it an interesting quirk, right? It can just literally be a doppelganger, but then like you will like, do we have it to where it's like the thing, where it like takes over the host body? Is it a doppelganger where like it just mimics the person? So like there'll be a situation where there's 2 of the same person. Which one are you wanting?
The mimic one, yeah.
Okay. So knowing that, now we can start to figure out, okay, we have a shapeshifter. Let's say it's in a mansion, because that's going to be easy to do.
Yeah,
right?
sure.
We can do a mansion where all the party members are invited to it for one reason or another. And then you can add some NPCs in there. So let's say probably like the reading of a will, right? That's super,
Yeah, that's super
and that's super
common.
creepy too, because it's already around death.
Death, yeah.
You can have it to where like everyone is like related to each other, or maybe not, right? Like maybe two party members are married, and one of them is related to the person who died.
Maybe one person had worked for that person, like
Right.
groundskeeper, best friend, things like that. Yeah.
So then what you want to do is you want to figure out, okay, so we have our setting, we have our monster. Why is the monster there? So perhaps it's just the monster's there just because it literally just wants the money.
Actually, I was thinking you don't just leave money in a will sometimes. Sometimes you leave like heirlooms or maybe something magical, supernatural. So maybe that's what.
Yes, and then that can be that means literally everything else in the will can be a phenomenal red herring.
Absolutely.
Right?
There you have it.
So now where all the other members are thinking, oh, they're just trying to kill us off because they want a bigger cut of the inheritance.
Yes. Oh.
In actuality,
This is a good story. That we're
in
creating,
actuality,
guys.
what we're doing is we're making it to where this monster knows that, let's say it's behind a safe, and the safe can't be opened until the reading of the will. But the monster is also aware that only one specific person is going to be able to open the safe, but they don't know who. Right? And so the monster has to figure out which person it is before the will is read, because once the will is read, they have to open the safe immediately, and it's not worth it anymore, because like this monster's trying to be subtle, we'll say. Maybe because, and like again, we have to ask, why is the monster being subtle? Right? Obviously for our reasons, it's for plot purposes, right?
Yeah, correct.
But maybe the monster's being subtle because it's super like weak. Like literally you could kill it so easily.
Yeah.
Like it's just a normal person.
And I also liked something you said earlier, that it should have a tell. Like, but it shouldn't be an obvious tell.
Right.
Like, so I'm trying to think of like what it could be like. Could it like excessively sweat or something, or you know?
maybe when it's around fire, it actually loses like color in its skin.
Oh, okay.
And so it's going around the mansion putting out fires, and it's like, why does the place keep getting put out?
Yeah.
This is weird. And so like maybe when they inevitably discover, oh, okay, his doppelganger like becomes more silhouetted, like more like gray.
Yeah.
When it's near fire, that's how we're going to be able to tell.
Perfect. I love it.
Right. And so now we figured out the monster. We figured out the means to defeat it. We figured out
why they're doing it. Motive.
And who all's there, like the reasoning the players are there, right?
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
For
and so
setup.
now, and so we're not gonna fill out too much more than that.
No, I think that's perfect.
I think in this situation, if I was making this, I would tell each player, hey, come up with a reason you want to be the only person to have everything left in the will.
Yes.
Right. Having that, and then you can have a few NPCs who are also like that. Then you can, if you want to be that person, you can write down on a sheet of card and give it to everybody and just be like, you are normal. Like, right. Just write that. And you literally don't even have to, say one of them's the doppelganger. You just write you are normal. And then maybe every so often you like reshuffle it and you're like, now you're the doppelganger. And you're like,
that is so this is genuine surprise. I promise you. I'm like, that is such a good idea.
Right. And so again, we came up with game mechanics that are around the story.
Yeah. Did we just create a game? I feel like we kind of did.
I think this is like, I am stealing a little bit from a Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah, I feel like that
but,
too, but yeah.
That is the fun of it, is that you
awesome.
can then come up with like some ways of like, how do I make it interesting, right? Because if you never have the players be a doppelganger, then like the players know that they should always trust each other. But if you can seed in some doubt, even if they are never the doppelganger, then it's like, oh, I don't know, I want to kill you because I want the rest of that inheritance because I'm bankrupt now, and if I don't get your cut of the inheritance, I'm blah 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 blah, right?
Yeah.
And so that could be interesting too.
Like, yeah, oh man, this would be a fun game to play.
Right. So that's how you want to do it. You want to start with the trope. You want to figure out the why and go from there. So I would say those are the big things.
Hopefully you guys took something away from that. If this is and what we just did here, if you want to take that and use that, go for it. Anything we do here on this channel, we we're more than happy for you guys to use in your own way.
One last thing before we head off,
sure.
And also to fill time. We again, feel free to like steal stuff, but like it doesn't hurt also to do some more additional research in like how plotting works and stuff like that, because
Absolutely.
we're obviously going over major points, but
Yeah.
a big factor into whether your players are going to enjoy it or not is pacing.
Yes.
Pacing is a huge thing. Knowing how to pace it properly is going to be really important. Part of that is going to genuinely just come from playing the game.
Yeah.
And being able to read, okay, my players are losing interest here. Let's wrap it up and move on to the next bit. There's different kinds of pacing. You're going to have the critical roles who want to literally discuss what they're going to do for an entire episode. They're like 2-3 hours in and they just figured out what they want to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm personally like, really? Like, because they want to role play every moment of it.
Yeah,
And
of
that's
course, of
perfectly
course.
fine.
Yeah.
But then there's our group where it's like, okay, guys, hey, we're off track. Let's just figure out what we want to do. Cool, we've done it. Let's go.
Yeah.
And knowing the difference between that can also know how much you need to prepare. Knowing that your group is really like, let's just get on to the next thing, means you should probably prepare a little bit more than the group that's like, no, we want to like really discuss it. We want to really be in character and figure it out. In regards to actually doing pacing, it's really just going to be a trial and error kind of thing. I would recommend you can ask your players afterwards, like, hey, how did you feel about that?
Mm-hmm.
Knowing good criticism, when to take it. If they're like, that was dumb. Why was it dumb? Well, because my character died. And it's like, well, that was what happened with the dice. I'm sorry that your character died. Now I know for the future, don't kill your character, right?
Yeah. What?
Like, that's an idea. But
Yeah.
like, if it's like, oh, I liked it. I really liked this part and I didn't like this part. If you can figure out, oh, he didn't like this part because I was on Charles's character the entire time for like 45 minutes, just figuring out what kind of brooch he wants to buy.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Make sure you're. This is more about game playing. Tip for GMs. Make sure you're giving each player their time to shine.
Right.
Frank is really good at doing that.
But that's because I've had practice. I've
yeah.
had some times where like I gave a player 45 minutes to do one thing and all the other players were bored, because as the GM, you're always on. You're always in the moment. And so it's hard for you to disassociate because you're always doing something. Versus the players, it might be very difficult to figure that out.
And I think a good way to get the players to, maybe better for another video, but just as a final tip, I guess, have your players interact with each other, even off the side to, sometimes while the other, maybe there's focus going on. You don't want them to be too distracted, but maybe give them something to think about, a decision to be made.
Right. Like we talked about, like you'll hear a lot of people talk about with combat, especially turn-based combat systems, where they're like, all right, Charles, you're up next. Jeffrey's on deck. Jeff, think about what you're going to do. All right, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And that's usually a good thing too. So another good way to do it with pacing is to like basically cut to the other team right as something interesting happens, right?
Oh, that was fun.
For example, in our Star Wars campaign,
Yep.
Charles and Evan's characters were able to escape perfectly fine.
Yep.
And so I'm like, okay, well, they're not like, we're going to cut to this other group. And then they start falling off. And as they're falling off, I cut back, right? Obviously as a joke of like, look, they're in the elevator and you can see them falling.
Yeah.
But that also, one, gives the first group time to figure out what the heck are we going to do? How are we going to get out of this situation? Two, it reminds the second group, you're still in this game. You're still doing something. You, in fact, look how funny this situation is. And it then allows me to go back to the other group where they feel like they're feeling like, okay, we're still being involved because we got time to think. And the other group's like, we're still involved because we were in this funny moment together. And so knowing like when to hop back and forth, right? If we go back to our example, everyone's going to be investigating a little bit like what's going on.
Yeah.
If you have a character who's like, you walk in the room and you see two Chucks. All right, over here. It's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Right? Like you literally have
build
that
that suspense.
Right.
Build the suspense. Base it.
Right. Knowing when to cut is going to be important. Obviously, in suspense and horror, cutting right as something interesting happens is going to be key. And then going to someone else and being like, okay, so he just interacted with the monster. But then that means this thing, this mannequin that's moving around on its own isn't the monster? What is it? Right. And being able to have those interesting back and forth, because you're going to have your players be like, okay, I'm just thinking about what the heck I'm going to do next. I'm not even realizing that this person's taking 15-20 minutes to do their own thing. So I would say pacing is also a huge part.
Absolutely.
And getting used to that as well. So key points, we'll just summarize. Know your tropes. Be flexible. Be able to improvise. If you're able to come up with little nuggets that you can put regardless of where your party ends up, that ties back to the main plot, do so. Tie your character backstories into it, because that's what's going to really get your characters interested. And focus on pacing, because pacing is important. Ain't that right, Charles?
Very much so. Again, we're at the end of our video. Please like the video, subscribe to our channel. Again, we will keep putting out this content every so often. If you have any suggestions, leave them in the comments. If you have any comments you want to make, just leave it in the comments. So.
Yeah, and if you want to see that exact thing, we'll probably do a one-shot at some point of it because we are going to review Candela Obscura at some point in the near future. And so we'll probably actually maybe do that. Maybe I'll change it a little bit so that way Charles doesn't know what's going to go on. Who knows?
I'm on board for that.
Until next time, everybody.
Stay witty.
We got to harmonize next time.
Stay witty.
I said next time.
Stay witty.